everybody. Welcome to High Heat. Good to have you aboard on this Tuesday, middle of January. Talking about what's going on as far as the world of baseball is concerned. As we move it along here, a little closer to spring training, about a month or so. So we'll be all over that. Alana's returned today, too. Looks good with a nice tan. We'll talk to her momentarily. She basically rented out the third floor of a five-star south of Cancun. Hey, listen, you can't take it with you, and Alana doesn't, of course, from a money standpoint. Let's go in with Chris Benetti today. Joy's in the house. Will Folger, I'm driving crazy. He's here, too. All right, we did this on December 22nd, our last show of the year. We broke down the sport as far as tiers are concerned, all 30 teams. So for the next 5 days, and remember, the Hall of Fame is next Tuesday, so we'll do a Hall of Fame brushback for you that day on the 24th. But for the next 5 brushbacks, we're going to look at these teams that I broke down back in late December and do a tier scenario about where they stand as far as the coming season is concerned. We're going to start with the bottom teams in the sport that need a lot of help as far as being competitive and trying to figure out their future. We're going to kick it off with Oakland, because here's your list that we did in these 6. So we got 6 teams in each tier, and the A's are a mess. I mean, listen, they got a very good GM. We know that. I'm sure a lot of the trades they've made have garnered them a lot of good prospects that eventually would turn out to be good major league players, but they got a AAA lineup. The ballpark's a mess, and until they figure that out and where they're going to play, it's almost even difficult to assess the A's because they got to get out of Oakland. I've said this forever. We all know they have to eventually leave. They're not going to get a ballpark in that state. They're not going to get a ballpark in that city. So where they go will be very interesting to see. I mean, I think Vegas, I think somewhere on the West Coast, I think Nashville down the road will get a team, maybe Montreal. But I do think that Oakland eventually will find themselves in Las Vegas the sooner rather than later. The sooner the better. And as far as this year is concerned, the A's are going to be, last year they lost 100 games. They'll probably lose 100 again. And they have talent because, Billy Beane's done a good job of bringing in a lot of people there. With all the trades they made, the latest one, of course, being the catcher, goes to Atlanta. So they're number 1. The Nationals would be in the bottom 6, too. Last year they only won 55 games. Now, the difference with the Nationals is, they got a great GM. Manager's good. The ownership situation is sorting itself out. And eventually they're going to spend a lot of money and they're going to resume being a big-time team. They're not there yet. They made a lot of trades, of course, the Soto one included. They have some young pitching. They got a catcher. They're in a tough division. So as far as 2023 is concerned, you can't expect much. But the future with Washington is going to be okay. They have a place to play. They won a championship. The good GM. You can't be too worried about the Nationals. Now, they're not going to be competitive this year, but you can't be too worried about them. Number 3 is Pittsburgh, the Pirates. Now, listen, I love Cherington. Eventually, they're going to keep enough of these players that they'll be halfway decent. But I would be frustrated if I'm a Pirate fan. We know they got a low payroll. I understand that. They brought in a lot of these veteran players this year. Of course, a guy like Santana, Rich Hill, we talked to the other day, those kind of people, which would probably help in the clubhouse. But the Pirates are the Pirates. And until they go out there and, we don't know if the third baseman is going to be great. Do we know if the shortstop's going to be great? What are they going to do with Reynolds? You don't quite know what's going to happen with Pittsburgh. Eventually, though, they got to get off this roller coaster where they develop players and they can't sign them and they trade. They develop players they can't sign and trade. Eventually, you got to keep a team together and build in that great city, great ballpark and everything else. Pirates probably the same kind of team they were a year ago. You have a little hope because the GM is good and they got a nice ballpark. Cincinnati now, you worry about the Reds. I mean, this is a very prideful franchise. They get out of the Votto contract eventually. It's his last year. There's a buyout that will help them. They have a little pitching, I would think. But last year was a disaster. They played themselves out of any contention the first 2 weeks of the season. You wonder a little bit about what's going on with the ownership scenario. Let's be fair. And I don't know where the Reds are. I mean, a lower payroll team, not going to get any better in that department. They haven't developed an amazing amount of young players, which also, although the second baseman's a young player, and of course, a couple of pitchers. But still, you wonder where Cincinnati is is I can't expect much as far as 2023 is concerned. I have a little more confidence in the Pirates than I do in the Reds, only because of their farm systems and who's running the team. Rockies and the Royals would be next. Colorado's got a big payroll, $155 million to be this bad. They also got a good manager. Maybe they'll get something out of Bryant. That contract has been, it was a killer last year. He did absolutely nothing. He didn't even hit a home run in Coors Field. He's been nothing but hurt the last couple years. Maybe this year will be a little different. Who knows? They have the makings of a decent pitching staff. Last year, the staff was the worst in the sport. As you'd expect to be bad in Coors Field anyway, but the ERA last year was over 5. You know, they got a couple of those pitchers, Marquez included. We understand that. But you got to wonder where Colorado is. You know, I mean, it's so difficult to build a sustainable team in that market. And it's a good ballpark, good fan base, and a good manager. And they spend money, but they're in a tough division. And, you know, it seems like on a year-in, year-out basis, they spin their wheels. Arizona's overtaking them now in that division. Rockies will be a last-place team, you'd think, in 2023. And then finally, there's Kansas City. Ownership, obviously new ownership, a front office change the last year or so. They've made changes in that department. They got some young players that you'd like. I don't know where the pitching is ever going to come from. They got a big catcher. It's a great franchise. They've won 2015 and 16, obviously. They were 14 and 15. They were very, very good. You know what the problem with the Royals is? They can build it for a couple of years, but then they got to bail because they can't keep everybody together. So, I mean, maybe they're going to run into another window where they can be good for a year or two. But Kansas City, they're in a bad division, which helps them because there's not a big payroll team there. But you hate to see the Royals continue to languish. A little more hope for them, obviously, with Witt there and everything else. You figure there's some young talent, but still, last year was horrendous, and this year you can't expect much. Nationals, I have some confidence in. Rockies have a bigger payroll, which you like. They got to get the A's out of Oakland. We all know that. And then the Royals, Pirates, and Reds are 3 franchises that I would be concerned about, especially Pirates and Cincinnati, if I was running the sport. That is where we begin on this. And we'll do a few more tomorrow, and then, of course, on Thursday, Friday, Monday, as we get to the top-tier teams. Nice to have you with us. Alana's back, and, yeah, she was frolicking. And believe me, I looked at the – go online and take a peek at this place. I mean, you don't think Alana's staying at Days Inn, do you? I mean, geez. This was a place for the Kings. Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton used to go to this place. I mean, this was one of the all-timers. South of Cancun, they have an Alana Rizzo room, which is nice, and she enjoyed herself for the 4 days. You may now have the floor. Take it away.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's amazing how you tell them to look up the place, but you don't even tell them the name of the place because you don't know the name of the place because you're completely wrong about everything that you just said about my trip. But I am back. I am happy to be back with you here in the United States. Oakland Athletics, the lowest payroll in all of Major League Baseball. The biggest loss for them, of course, was Bob Melvin. And now you can basically argue that they've lost their best player when they let Sean Murphy go. As you can tell, I'm out of practice because I've been on the beach for 5 days. All right, so Oakland Athletics, everything with that whole stadium situation is an absolute mess. I do like their front office, but you can't compete there. And the Oakland Athletic fans deserve better than what they're getting. Washington Nationals, I understand they have the payroll. They have a great president of baseball ops in Mike Rizzo. They have the ownership group, but we don't know what the new ownership group is going to do. That's the problem with that team. You don't know how handcuffed Mike Rizzo is in terms of being able to spend when it comes to the future for the Washington Nationals. I think they're going to get back there, and let's not forget, they won a World Series championship in 2019, so they get a bit of a pass as we're going into this 2023 season, but you don't know what the future holds for them as far as a payroll perspective is concerned because you don't know what the ownership group is. Colorado Rockies have been in the Chris Bryant sweepstakes and have coveted that player for as long as I can remember, even when I was covering the Rockies solely way back in the day. Chris Bryant is in the middle of a massive contract with the Colorado Rockies, and I'm not certain how many games he has even played in the last couple of years. I mean, this is a guy that is everybody on the Colorado Rockies staff wanted to have in their clubhouse, in that dugout, and he is still seeking his first home run as a Rocky at Coors Field. They need him to be healthy. I mean, they live and die now by what Chris Bryant does. So there you have that. The Kansas City Royals, they're not in the worst division in the world, so they have an opportunity there. I love the fact that they have some young talent. That is good for them. And the Reds, I think the biggest thing with them is that they have an ownership group that says, where are the fans going to go? What are they going to do? That's an unfortunate situation to have. They don't have front-end pitching. I believe these 5 teams, with the exception of the Washington Nationals and the Colorado Rockies, who do have a decent payroll and try to get good players there, I don't think these teams compete. I'm not saying that they're tanking. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying, but they don't compete. They don't have to compete. The Pittsburgh Pirates are bringing in some veteran players. Andrew McCutchen is back. I like that move for the Pirates fans. I'm not sure I like that move for Andrew McCutchen, but I do like the fact that the fans get to see him again, where it all started for him. Rich Hill is going to pitch until he's 50 years old. Santana is in the Pirates uniform now. I remember when the Pittsburgh Pirates used to be one of the best franchises and one of a team that you want to watch every single year after year after year, and they're not that way. It's almost as if they build up the team. Remember when Clint Hurdle was there and they got the team into the postseason, and like every other time they've been in the postseason, they dismantled the team quickly. I hate that about the Pirates organization. Fans don't get to hang on to players for a very long time, star players, because it just seems like they're gone. And what's going to happen with Brian Reynolds? I mean, he has been asking for a trade for months. Is that going to be a trade deadline situation for him where Brian Reynolds is gone from there? I don't think the Pittsburgh Pirates are going to be competing at the trade deadline in the NL Central. Who knows? So perhaps Reynolds isn't even there for the long haul. We'll see. You know he wants to get out.
Yeah, I don't know if he's not Roberto Clemente, but I understand. Good job out of Alana there today. She got a lot to do, of course, with interviews with Beckett and Vogt. I'm going to talk to Ryan Sandberg and a Sack Hall of Famer statue coming in Chicago. Stick with it.